It is a land unlike any other on Earth, a continent shaped by fire, time, and isolation, where ancient stories echo through deserts, forests, and seas. Australia, a place both harsh and beautiful, familiar yet entirely unique. For tens of thousands of years, it was home to one of the world's oldest continuous cultures. Then, in the age of sail, new arrivals came, carrying with them ambition, conflict, and the seeds of a modern nation. This is the story of Australia, from dreamtime to federation, from colonial outpost to modern power. Hello, and welcome to Fire of Learning. Today we turn our attention to the Southern Land, or, as it was once known in Latin, Terra Australis. This is the full history of Australia, one of resilience, reinvention, and extraordinary transformation.
The first Australians. Long before any Europeans set eyes on the continent, Australia was already an ancient world, inhabited by peoples whose ancestors arrived over 50,000 years ago, making them among the earliest travelers in human history. Sea levels were lower then, exposing land bridges through Southeast Asia. Small groups crossed by sea, becoming some of the first mariners in the world. Over tens of millennia, their descendants spread across the continent, adapting to rainforest, desert, and coast. These were the Aboriginal Australians, whose cultures, languages, and traditions formed one of humanity's deepest connections to the land. At the heart of their spiritual life lies the dreaming, or dreamtime, a sacred understanding of creation where ancestral beings shaped the world. To them, time was not linear, but cyclical. Past, present, and future intertwined. Their songs, stories, and art preserved knowledge older than most civilizations, and in some cases, described real events like rising sea levels thousands of years ago. By the time Europe entered its Renaissance, Australians had already lived here, largely undisturbed, for over 2,000 generations. The search for Terra Australis. For centuries, scholars in Europe imagined that there must exist a great southern continent, a counterweight to balance the known world in the north. They called it Terra Australis Incognita, the unknown southern land. No Roman or Greek had ever seen it, but in the age of exploration, European powers set out to find it. The first confirmed European contact came in 1606, when Dutch navigator Willem Janszoon sighted and landed on the northern coast near modern-day Cape York. He thought he was in New Guinea, but he had, unknowingly, found Australia. Over the next decades, other Dutch explorers mapped parts of the western and southern coasts, calling the vast, empty land New Holland. Yet they saw no wealth, no spices, and no easy living, only heat, desert, and danger. And so they left. It would take another century before anyone truly recognized the potential of this strange island. James Cook and British discovery. In 1768, the Admiralty sent Captain James Cook on a voyage to observe the planet Venus, and perhaps to find the fabled southern continent. After charting New Zealand, Cook's ship, the Endeavour, turned west. In 1770, he landed at Botany Bay and claimed the entire eastern half of the continent for Britain, naming it New South Wales. At first, Britain paid little attention, but that would soon change, because events in another colony across the ocean were about to reshape the empire. Convicts and colonization. When Britain lost the American colonies in 1783, it also lost a place to send its prisoners. The solution lay far away in Cook's New South Wales. In 1788, the first fleet arrived at Botany Bay under Captain Arthur Phillip. 11 ships carrying over 1,000 settlers, most of them convicts. They founded a small outpost on the shores of Sydney Cove, the humble beginning of modern Australia. Life was brutal. Food was scarce, disease rampant, and the land unfamiliar. Governor Phillip struggled to maintain order and peace with the Aboriginal peoples, though conflict, misunderstanding, and tragedy soon followed. Yet slowly, the colony endured. Free settlers arrived, farms spread, and more convicts were sent. By the early 1800s, a new society was taking shape. Rebellion and expansion. The early decades were not without turmoil. In 1804, Irish convicts staged the Vinegar Hill Rebellion, inspired by uprisings back home. It was crushed. Just 4 years later, soldiers of the New South Wales Corps overthrew Governor William Bligh in the Rum Rebellion, Australia's only successful military coup. Meanwhile, explorers like Matthew Flinders charted the entire coastline, proving it was one continent and suggesting the name Australia. By the 1820s, new colonies were founded: Tasmania, Perth, Adelaide, Melbourne, Brisbane. The population grew from thousands to tens of thousands, and then hundreds of thousands. But expansion came at a terrible cost. As settlers moved inland, the frontier wars erupted, a series of violent conflicts between Aboriginal peoples and European colonists. Tens of thousands of Indigenous Australians were killed, and many more perished from disease and displacement. The Gold Rush and Prosperity. In 1851, everything changed. Gold was discovered in Victoria. The Australian gold rush brought fortune seekers from Britain, Ireland, China, and America. Cities like Melbourne exploded in size, wealth, and ambition. But it also brought inequality. Miners rebelled against harsh license fees and corruption, hoisting a new flag, the Eureka flag, at Ballarat in 1854. The Eureka Rebellion was crushed, but its ideals of democracy and fair representation endured, shaping the nation's politics for generations. By the late 1800s, Australia was transforming, rich in wool, gold, and self-confidence. Each colony had its own government, army, and identity, yet all were still under the British Crown. Toward a nation. By the 1900s, many Australians began to dream of unity. Economic hardship and fear of foreign powers like Germany encouraged talk of federation. In 1901, that dream became reality. On January 1st, the Commonwealth of Australia was born, a federation of 6 colonies under one constitution. The new nation had its own Prime Minister, Edmund Barton, and a capital to be, Canberra. Baptism of Fire. Australia's first great test came in World War I. When Britain declared war on Germany in 1914, Australia joined automatically. Over 400,000 men enlisted, nearly half of the eligible population. At Gallipoli, they fought bravely alongside New Zealanders as the Anzacs, forging a legend of courage and sacrifice that endures today. By war's end, over 60,000 Australians were dead, but their nation had found its identity. War, depression, and the Pacific threat. The 1920s brought prosperity. The 1930s brought hardship. The Great Depression hit Australia hard, leaving 1 in 3 without work. And then, in 1939, the world once again descended into war. Australia joined Britain in fighting Nazi Germany, but the real danger came from the east, Imperial Japan. In 1942, Japanese aircraft bombed Darwin, marking the first attack on Australian soil. Fears of invasion swept the nation, and Australia drew closer to a new ally, the United States. Together, they fought the Japanese in New Guinea and across the Pacific until final victory in 1945. Modern Australia. The post-war years transformed the nation. Millions of immigrants arrived from Europe and later from Asia, reshaping Australia into a vibrant, multicultural society. In 1986, with the passage of the Australia Act, the last ties of British legal authority were severed. Australia was now fully independent, though the British monarch remained its symbolic head of state.
Today, Australia stands as one of the most developed nations on Earth, a land of unique wildlife, strong democracy, and deep cultural memory. Yet its history, from dream time to modern times, remains a story of survival, identity, and the unending relationship between people and land. Australia's past is vast, stretching from the ancient fires of the Dreaming to the glass towers of Sydney. It is a story of tragedy and triumph, of struggle and resilience. From the world's oldest living culture to a modern global nation, this is the extraordinary history of Australia. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking, subscribing, and joining us again as we continue our series on the histories of nations and peoples.